We're on page 50 something. Does it really matter? Yes, of course it does. Okay, so we're here with what's your handle again? Bugs?
Bugs Bunny.
We're here with Bugs Bunny. Yes. We're talking about the attire of a harlot. What's the proper attire that a harlot should wear? So, Bugs, you're saying that she would wear a shazulot. This is an ancient word and it has no meaning whatsoever today. Shechuzot. Yes. It's an acronym of shit zona. Yes, shit. It's not different from any other kind of shit, something that you might wrap yourself with. But it was, the letters of Taf and Het were in fact exchanged to make it sexier and more enticing for a common street strumpet. Okay, a rechelim, however, that's what a harlot may go out with, but a rechel, okay, no more funny accent. We learned in the Mishnah, use may go out kivulot. Yes, and this is of course brought down in the halacha. Use may go out kivulot on the Shabbat, otherwise known as the Shabbat, with their tails tied down to prevent the males from mounting them like this. Okay. I'm going to bring a U in heat right now to explain better so you can see what it looks like when a U is in fact in heat and it is out. We're trying to make the Gemara live, make it alive. Other than that boring stuff that they give on the other channels. Okay. So, Yochi, you're going to be the U here, okay? Okay, now just get in that position. There we go. Okay, lovely. Rechelim yotzot kvulot. My kvulot shemekavlin el alya shelahen lamatza. What does it mean kvulot? It means that they bind their tails down with animal hide kedei shelo yalu aleim azcharim, so the males will not mount them. Okay, my mashma dahai kavul. What's the meaning of the word kavul? Lishna dela avid perihu. It means something that does not bear fruits. Diktiv ma he'arim ha'ele asher natatali achi vayikra lehen eretz kavul ad yom hazeh. If you look in 1 Kings chapter 9, you'll see, what cities are these which you have given me, my brother? And he called them the land of Kabul today. Now, isn't there a place in Kabul called Afghanistan, called Kabul, maybe? A place that does not give any fruits. Don't tell anybody of Kabul that. They might get the wrong idea. Okay, my Eretz Kabul. What's the meaning of the land of Kabul? Amar Rav Huna, Shayu ba b'nei Adam she'mekubalin b'kesef v'zahav. The people living there were bound, mekubalim, and surrounded by their silver and their gold. Amar le Rabba, Yihachi hainu diktiv, kilo yashru be'enav. Rabba said to him, if that is so, what is written? And Hiram came out of Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they pleased him not. Lo yashru be'enav. Nipnei shekavulin b'kesef u'v'zahav lo yashru be'enav. Does it make any sense that because the people were bound in silver and gold, that the cities were not pleasing in his eyes? Some people might find that quite pleasing. Amar le'in, Rabbi said to him, yes. Kevan shem atire u'mfanke lo avde avidita. Since the people were wealthy and delicate, they did not perform labor. So Hiram was actually seeking people who worked for a living. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Eretz Chomtin Haita. Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak said it was a sandy place, Homton. Eretz Homton, a sandy expanse of land. V'amai karele kavul. Why was it called kavul? De mishe targaba kara ad kavla. Because the leg sinks into it up to the ankle. The kavla is an ancient Aramaic for ankle. So, Amra inashe ara makabla de la avad pere. The ancient saying went, it's a land that is bound, makabla, that does not produce fruits. This is a modern Hebrew word used in modern usage. Kavul is a cable, right? Bound. Kavunot. The Mishnah mentions ewes may go out kavunot. My kavunot she makabnin oto lemelat. They are covered mechabnin with they're covered in order to produce fine wool. The wool is covered, it comes out better. Sheep were wrapped in cloth from the day they were born, so their wool would remain perfectly clean. Amar Rav Beve Amar Bar Abaye Ketsemer Neki Ben Yomo Shemekabninoto Lemilat. What is white wool? Rabbi Abaye said it's like the clean wool of a newborn lamb which they cover from birth to produce fine wool, melat. V'ha'izim yotzot tzrurot, when Mishnah continues, and the she-goats may go out with their udders bound. So Rabbi Yossi prohibits doing so. Rabbi Yehuda distinguishes between a case where the udders were bound to dry the milk supply and a case where they were bound to conserve the milk. Itmar, Rav Amar halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda, Ushmuel Amar halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. The halacha is Rav said the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, and Shmuel said the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. And there are those who teach the halacha independent of the Mishnah. Amar Rav Amar liyabesh mutar velo lechalev. Rav said if the udders were bound to dry the milk supply, it's permitted, and not if they were bound in order to conserve the milk. The Shmuel Amar echad ze v'echad ze asur. Shmuel prohibits it in both cases. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. So, and some taught it in this way. Izim yotzot tzurot liyabesh v'lo lechalev. Goats may go out with the udders bound to dry the milk supply, but not to conserve the milk. Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera amru kach halacha. In the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, they said that's the halacha. Aval mi mefis ezo liyabesh ve'ezo lechalev. But the letter of the law is like that. But who can cast lots to determine by sight alone which udder is bound to dry the milk and which was bound to conserve the milk? Because you can't distinguish, they're both forbidden. Amar Shmuel, Amr la Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. They say that the law is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. In terms of practical halacha, according to all versions of this disagreement, Shmuel holds that it is prohibited in both cases. Ki'ata Rabin Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha ketanakama. When Rabin came from the land of Israel to Babylonia, he said that Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of the anonymous first Tana of the Mishnah. He permits goats to go out with their udders bound. So what's the halacha? The halacha is like this. According to the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam, if the purpose is to dry the milk supply, goats may go out with the udders bound. If the goal is to prevent the milk from dripping to the ground, it is prohibited. But this follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda because Rav ruled in accordance with his opinion. According to the Jerusalem Talmud, however, apparently Rabbi Yochanan, despite his assertion that the halacha is in accordance with the anonymous first Tana, also holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. In disputes where Rav and Rabbi Yochanan disagree with Shmuel, the halacha is ruled in accordance with the majority. Next, Mishnah, uvame ena yotza. And with what may an animal not go out in the public domain on Shabbat? Lo yitze gamal bemetultelet, lo akud, lo velo ragul, v'kein shar kol behemot. A camel may not go out with a saddlecloth, nor may it go out akud or ragul, which are different ways of tying the legs together, as will be explained in the Gemara. And likewise, tying all other animals in those manners is prohibited. Lo yikshor gemalim ze b'zeh v'yimshoch. Likewise, one may not tie camels one to another and pull the lead camel, thereby pulling all the other ones after it. Aval machnis chavalim l'toch yado v'yimshoch v'ilvad shlo yichroch. However, he may place the ropes tied to each other, tied to each of the camels in his hand, and pull them all, provided he does not intertwine the ropes. The Gemara says, Tana, lo yetzeh gamal b'metultelet akshura lo biznavo. Aval yotzehu b'metultelet akshura biznavo uvachotarto. One camel may not go out with a saddlecloth tied to its tail alone. However, it may go out with a saddlecloth tied to both its tail and its hump. As in this case, one can assume that the saddlecloth will not fall off. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna Yotze Hagamal b'Metzutelet B'Shura La V'Shilyata. Rabba bar Rav Huna says a female camel may go out with a saddlecloth tied to its afterbirth, because any moment of this movement of the saddlecloth will cause pain. For that reason, the animal will not attempt to detach it. Therefore, there is no room for concern that it might fall. Lo akud v'lo ragul. We learned in the Mishnah it may not go out akud or ragul. So, what are these terms? The Gemara explains. Amar Rav Yehuda, akud akidat yad v'regel ki Yitzchak ben Abraham. Akud means that it's similar to the binding of Isaac, where its foreleg and hind leg are bound together. I don't want to say hog-tied, it sounds kind of crude, but that's what we call it also. Ragul shelo yichof yado al gabe zor'o ve'yikshor. Ragul means that one may not bend the lower part of the foreleg onto the upper part of the foreleg and tie it. This was done so the camel would have the use of only 3 legs and one would be unable to run away. Meitive, akud shtei yadayim u'shtei raglayim. Ragul shelo yichof yado al gabe zor'o ve'yikshor. The Gemara raises an objection based on the following writing. Akud means the animal's 2 forelegs and 2 hind legs are bound together. Ragul means that one may not bend the lower part of the foreleg onto the upper part of the foreleg and tie it. So the Gemara answers that the Gemara says, Huda Amar ki haitana. The Tanya akud akidat yad v'regel o shtei yadayim o shtei raglayim. Ragul shelo yichof yado al gabe zor'o ve'yikshor. So the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yehuda holds in accordance with this Tana. And it was taught in a Braita. Akud means that either the animal's foreleg and hind leg, or 2 forelegs and 2 hind legs are bound together. Ragul means that one may not bend the lower part of the foreleg onto the upper part of the foreleg and tie it. V'akati lo dame. The Gemara asked, and this Braita of Rabbi Yehuda's statement this Braita and Rabbi Yehuda's statement are still not the same. Vishlama Reisha B'Seifa Nicha Mitziate Kasha. So, granted, the first clause in the case of Akud and the latter clause in the case of Ragul work out well. The Braita and the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda correspond. However, the middle clause, the Mitziuta, is difficult. According to the Braita, when the animal's 2 forelegs and 2 hind legs are bound together, this is also considered Akud, contrary to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Elohuda Amar ki haitana. Akud akidat yad v'regel ki Yitzchak ben Abraham. Ragul shelo yichof yado al gabe zro'o ve'yikshor. Rather, Rabbi Yehuda said in his opinion, Rabbi Yehuda stated his opinion in accordance with this Tana, who said in the Braita, Akud means the animal's foreleg and hind leg are bound together, similar to the binding of Isaac, son of Abraham. Ragul means that one may not bend the lower part of the foreleg onto the upper part of the foreleg and tie it. And we learned in the Mishnah, Lo Yikshor Gemalim, one may not tie camels onto the other and pull the lead camel, thereby pulling the others after it. My taima, what's the reason for this? Amar Ravashi, Mishum de Mechase Kamanda Ezel Lechinga. Because it looks like somebody's going to the market, the Hinga, to sell merchandise or deliver a caravan of camels. In deference to Shabbat, one may not create such an impression. So, what's this word, chinga? The majority opinion is that the word chinga is in the context of, in this context means a market. Most people say it's a market. Elsewhere, Rashi interprets it as a long journey. The connotation of market is based on the custom to hold market days in conjunction with the pagan holiday where large masses of people would gather. Therefore, it's called chinga and not chaga, because chaga means a festival, while chinga indicates the sorrow and pain associated with idolatry. In a similar fashion, the sages referred to a pagan festival as Yom Edam, meaning a day of their misfortune. The Meiri mentions that the word chinga is derived from the word chuga, a circle or conduit, because one who goes to the market walks around in a circular fashion. Okay, the halacha in any case is, according to the Shulchan Aruch, is that a camel or any other animal will need not go out if its fore and hind leg are bound together, or if its forefoot is bent back so that it walks on three legs, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. And on Shabbat, according to the camels, on Shabbat the halacha is one may not tie camels from front to back as a caravan and pull the front camel. That's prohibited. On the other hand, if one holds several tethers in his hand, it's permitted to pull several camels together. According to one authority, even this is forbidden, and only a single camel may be led on the Sabbath. The Gemara continues, Aval Maskim, Aval Machnis. The Mishnah continues, however, he may place the ropes tied to each of the camels in his hand and pull them, provided that he does not intertwine the ropes. Amar Rav Ashi, lo shanu ela le'inyan kilayim. Rav Ashi said, this prohibition was taught with regard to the halachot of Shabbat, was not taught with regard to Shabbat, but it was only taught with regard to the prohibition of mixing diverse kinds, kilayim. So, the Gemara asked, kilayim demai, diverse kinds of what? Ilema kilayim de adam vatnan, adam mutar im kulam lachorosh v'limshoch. So if you say it's referring to the prohibition of mixing the diverse kinds of man and animal, meaning a man may not be tied to an animal, just as plowing with diverse kinds of an ox and donkey is prohibited, so this would be difficult. So, does kilaya mean human and animal together, diverse kinds, or different kind of animal together? So, didn't we learn in a Mishnah? That would be difficult because another Mishnah says, Tzanan, Adam mutar im kulam lachrosh v'shoch, that a person is permitted to plow and pull a wagon together with all animals. The prohibition is limited just to diverse kinds of animals amongst themselves. So, it's just a little note on the side here. The laws prohibiting diverse kinds with regard to animals include two separate prohibitions. The first prohibition is of mating animals of different species together. The second prohibition is to work a team of animals comprised of different species. Based on the verse in Deuteronomy 22, you shall not plow with an ox and an ass together. The case of a person pulling a plow together with an animal is not included in the prohibition of you shall not plow. Rather, the problem is different kinds of ropes. If one rope is made of wool and the other rope is made of linen, it's prohibited to intertwine them because that would create a forbidden mixture of the diverse kinds of wool and linen. V'hatanya, hatochef tchifa achat ena chibor. This is difficult because wasn't it taught in the Braita, one who attaches a swatch of wool and a swatch of linen together with a single stitch or knot, it is not considered a connection with regard to the prohibition of diverse kinds? All the more so in this case, when the ropes are not even tied together, but are merely intertwined, it should not be considered a connection. The Gemara answers, Le'olam kilayim d'chavalim, v'hachi kamaru v'ilvad shelo yichroch v'ikshor. Actually, the prohibition here is one of diverse kinds of ropes. And the Mishnah is saying as follows, provided that he does not intertwine the ropes and tie them together. ropes that are intertwined and tied together constitute a double knot, which is considered a connection with regard to the prohibition of diverse kinds of wool and linen. So, that settles it. Amar Shmuel, uvivad shelo yetze chevel mitachat yadot tefach. V'hatana devei Shmuel tfachayim. So Shmuel said there's another restriction that applies to pulling camels with ropes in Shabbat. It is only permitted provided that a handbreadth of the rope does not hang below his hand to avoid the appearance that he is carrying a rope in his hand on Shabbat. The Gemara raises an objection to this. Didn't the sage of the school of Shmuel teach a Braita provided that 2 handbreadths of the rope do not hang below his hand? So what is it, 1 handbreadth or 2 handbreadths? Amar Abaya Hashted Amar Shmuel Tefach. Abaya said, now that Shmuel said 1 handbreadth, V'tana Devei Shmuel Tfachayim, and a sage of the school of Shmuel taught 2 handbreadths, so it's reasonable to conclude Shmuel halacha l'maseh ata l'ashme'inan, that Shmuel came to teach us the practical halacha. Even though the Tanaim permitted the pulling of a camel as long as there's less than 2 handbreadths of the rope hanging down below his hand, in practice one should be stringent and not leave even 1 handbreadth hanging. V'hatanya u'levad she'yagbia min ha'karka tefach. The Gemara raises an objection. Wasn't it taught in the Braita that one is only permitted provided that he raises the rope 1 handbreadth from the ground? Apparently there's no restriction with regard to the length of the rope that's in the person's hand. So the Gemara answers, Ki Tanya hahi b'chavla devene bene. When this Braita was taught, it was regard to a length of a rope between the camel and the person holding it. The part of the rope may not sag below the ground, rather it must be raised at least 1 handbreadth so that it is clear that the rope is attached to the camel. Next, Mishnah. Mishnah says, Ein chamor yotzer b'mardat b'zman she'ena kishura lo, v'lo b'zug afal pi shehu pakuk, v'lo b'sulam shebetzavaro, v'lo b'ritzua sheberaglo. Mishnah lists additional objects with which an animal may not go out into the public domain on the Sabbath. A donkey may neither go out with a saddlecloth, which is not tied to its back, nor with a bell, even if it is plugged to prevent it from ringing, nor with a ladder that is around its neck, nor with a strap that is around its leg. So some explain that the strap was used to bind the fractured hoof of a donkey. The Mishnah continues, Ve'en hatarnagolim yotzin b'chutin v'lo b'ritzua sheberagleihem ve'en hazacharim yotzin ba'agalah shetachat aliyah shelahen. And roosters may not go out with strings and not with a strap on their feet, which are tied there as a sign of ownership. And rams may not go out with a small wagon under their tails, as it was a common practice to pull a small wagon under the tails of grown sheep, so the tail would not be injured when it was dragged along the ground. Mishnah continues, Ve'en rechelim yotzot chanunot, ve'en ha'egel yotze begimon, v'lo para bo'or ha'kipod, ha'kupar, v'lo b'ritzua sheben karnea. That's kupar, not kipod. So the ewes may not go out chanunot, nor may a calf go out with a gimon, nor may a cow go out with the skin of a hedgehog, kupar. I said kipod, which is modern word for a hedgehog, but kupar is the word in the Mishnah, nor with a strap between its horns. So the Mishnah relates that Paratoshel Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah hayta yotza b'ritzua sheben karnea shelo b'ritzon chachamim. The Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's cow would go out on Shabbat with a strap between its horns against the wishes of the sages. So another reason why the ram couldn't go out with a wagon underneath it, according to the Jerusalem Talmud, is that it would make a groove in the ground when it's being carried along. Now, the skin of a hedgehog, the Yerushalmi explains that this hedgehog skin was placed over the cow's udder to prevent the calves from suckling. Some commentaries, such as the Meiri, state that the hedgehog's skin was placed on the legs of the cow, so that when the animal stands in shallow water, leeches would not suck its blood. Like this. Ugh. What about Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's cow? Due to the astonishment with regard to the phrase in the Mishnah, contrary to the will of the sages, and the fact that they publicized this action and of one of the prominent Torah figures of the generation, the Gemara was forced to explain that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah refused to accept the opinion of the sages and acted defiantly. So the Yerushalmi relates that the sages threatened to exclude him from their company unless he removed the strap from between the cow's horns. There is even an opinion that the Mishnah is referring not to his cow, but to his wife, who would go out in the public domain with an item prohibited by the sages. Didn't want to say his wife, so it said his cow. To avoid publicizing the matter, the Mishnah referred to her as his cow, based on the verse, "If you had not plowed with my heifer," in Judges 14. What's a gimon? A gimon is the word that we used for a strap. That the calf can't go out with a gimon. Some authorities say it's from the Greek word chemos, meaning a horse's muzzle or a sack for animal feed. And with kupar, how did kupar become hedgehog? Apparently the correct reading is that of the aruch, koped, which is similar to the Arabic my Arabic is a little rustier. Kunfudh. The kipod is mentioned in the scripture is a nocturnal bird, while the quill, so it's not a hedgehog at all, it's a nocturnal bird, while the quill-covered rodent mentioned in this context is called a koped. So when we're mentioning from the scripture, we're talking about a bird, and when we're mentioning in this context, in the Mishnah, it's referring to the modern hedgehog. The Gemara, my taima kedamra. We learn in the Mishnah that a donkey may not go out in Shabbat with a saddlecloth if it was not tied to its back. So the Gemara explains what's the reason, my taima. As was stated above, there is room for concern. When it's not secured, the saddlecloth is liable to fall off the animal's back, and the owner may come to retrieve the saddlecloth in the public domain. V'lo bezug afal pishu pakuk, and not with a bell, even though the bell is plugged. Mishum demechase command azil v'chimga, because if it's unplugged and the bell is ringing, it looks like he's going to the market. V'lo besulam shebetzavaro, and not with a ladder around its neck. Amar Rahuda, be loa lamai avrele lehecha deitle makah. This refers to a device tied to the jaw. For what purpose does the owner do so to the animal? It's when it has a wound. For circumstances the animal has a wound, delo hadar chayech be, so it doesn't chafe it again and exacerbate the wound. The Mishnah says, "V'lo b'ritzua shebaraglo," nor with the strap around its legs. The Gemara explains, what purpose does this strap around the leg serve? And it answers, "The avri le gizra." Its owner does so to the animal in order to protect its strides. If the legs were slightly bent so they knock against each other, when the animal walks, a strap is tied there to prevent injury. The Mishnah says, "V'lo ve'ena tarnagolin yotzin b'chutim," then the roosters may not go out with strings. So what's the purpose of the strings? Da'avdi le simana ki hechi de la lichalfu. It's a sign indicating whom they belong to, so they won't become confused with other roosters. V'lo b'ritzua da'avdi la ki hechi de la litbaru mane. Nor with the strap on their feet. The Gemara says that the owner does so the roosters will not break the vessels. When their legs are tied, they jump around and cause less damage. So the Mishnah teaches that rams, that the rams may not go out with a small wagon underneath their tails. But the Gemara explains, that's in order that their tails will not become injured. The Mishnah says that ewes may not go out chanunot. The Gemara relates that Yativ Rav Acha bar Ula Kamed Rav Chisda. Rav Acha bar Ula was sitting before Rav Chisda. Yativ Kamar, he sat and said, B'sha'ashe gozazin ota tomnim la ezek b'shaman. From the time when they shear the wool off the animal, they soak a soft swatch of wool or some other material in oil to place it on the animal's forehead so that it will not catch a cold while its wool grows back. So chanunot refers to animals with those swatches to keep them warm. Amar le Rav Chisda, im ken asita mar ukva. If so, you turned the animal into the exilarch mar ukva. You turned the animal into the exilarch mar ukva? That is treatment fit for him, not for a shorn sheep. Interesting. So, Eli Yativ Rav Papa bar Shmuel Kamed Rav Chisda v'Yativ Kamar b'Shashe Korat Leled Tomnin la Shne Azkin Shel Shemen u'Milchin la Echad al Padachta v'Echad al Harechem Kedei Shetitchamem. Amar le Rav Nachman Im Ken Asita Yalta. Rather, Rav Papa bar Shmuel sat before Rav Chisda, and he said, at the time that the animal crouches to give birth, those tending the animal soak 2 swatches of wool and oil and place one on the animal's forehead and the other on its womb so that it will be warmed. Chanunot refers to animals with those swatches. Rav Nachman said to him, if so, you turned the animal into Yalta, my wife, who is descended from the house of the exilarch. This is treatment fit for her, for a royal woman, and not for an animal. Excuse me? Much better. Ele amar Rav Huna, etz echad yesh b'chrache hayam v'chanun shmo. Chanun. So, Rav Huna said there's a certain tree in the cities of the sea, and it's called Chanun. Umevi'in kesam umenichin la b'chutma kedei shetitatesh v'yiplu darne rosha. Those tending the animal will bring a wood chip from this tree and place it in the animal's nose so it will sneeze and the worm from its head will fall out. So the Gemara asks, Ihachi Zcharim Nami? Since the rams butt heads with each other, the worms thus will fall out at any event. So they're going to fall out anyway. Shimon Nazira Amar Kisma de Ritma. Shimon the Nazarite said that Chanunot is referring to animals whose nose a chip of a broom tree, a rotem, would be placed. Bishlam ad Rav Huna hainu dikatani Chanunot. So the Gemara asks, granted, according to the explanation of Rav Huna, that it is a chip taken from the Chanun tree. That's why the Mishnah teaches the halacha employing the term Chanunot. Ela l'Rabanan, my Chanunot, but according to the sages, what's the meaning of the word Chanunot? The avdinan lahu milta de merachaminan alayhu. The Gemara explains because they do something to the animals that indicates that we have mercy on them. Chanunot meaning merciful. Chanun. Ve'en ha'egel yotzei begimon. The Mishnah says a calf may not go out in Shabbat with a gimon. My egel. What did we say gimon was in Greek again? We said it was like a horse's muzzle, a sack for an animal feed. The Greek was chemos. So the Gemara asks, my egel b'gimon, what is the meaning of a calf with a gimon? Amar Rav Huna bar Nira. Rav Huna said it's a small yoke placed on the calf in order to train it from an early age to bear a yoke. Amar Rebbe Lazar, my mashma dahai gimon lishna de mikaf. Rebbe Lazar said, from where it is inferred that this term gimon is a term of bending, as it is written, diktiv, halachoch ka'agmon rosho. Sorry, halachof ka'agmon rosho. It is to bow down the head like a bulrush. An agmon is a bulrush. There is an etymological similarity between the words gimon and agmon. Mishnah continues, v'lo para ba'or kupar, and a cow may not go out on Shabbat with the skin of a hedgehog placed under its udder. Da'avdila ki hechi dila limetziua yale. The Gemara explains that the owner does this so the cow does this to the cow so the creeping animals won't suck from it. The Mishnah says not with a strap between its horns. The Gemara notes, if this is explained according to the opinion of Rav, ila Rav de Amar ben lenoi ben l'shamer asor, ila Shmuel de Amar lenoi asor l'shamer mutar. So if it's explained according to Rav, whether the strap was intended as an ornament or whether it was intended to secure the animal, it is prohibited for the cow to go into the public domain with it. If it's explained according to Shmuel, the strap would be an ornament, and then it would be prohibited. If it was intended to secure the animal, then it would be permitted. So if, according to Shmuel, if it's an ornament, it's prohibited. If it's to secure the animal, it's permitted. Paratosha Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, the Mishnah talks about how the cow of Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah would go on Shabbat with a strap between its horns, and the sages were not happy about this. Did Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah have only one cow? So Rav said, and some say Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Tresar alfe egle hava l'maaser Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah me'edre kol shata v'shata. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah would tithe from his herd 12,000 calves every year. There were 120,000 calves born in his herds annually. There is no way, then, to speak of the cow of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. There was so many cows, one cow. Okay, Rav v'Rav Chanina v'Rabbi Yochanan v'Rav Chaviva matnu bekule de seder moed. It was related that Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yochanan, and Rav Chaviva taught the statement cited below. The Gemara comments, throughout the order of Moed, Bekuli de Seder Moed, Kol ki hai zuga chalufe, Rabbi Yochanan u'ma'ayel Rabbi Yonatan. Throughout Moed, whenever this pair of sages is mentioned, exchange Rabbi Yochanan and put in Rabbi Yonatan in his place. So the Gemara offers this emendation because of a chronological problem. Rabbi Yochanan was much younger than Rav, and there was an even greater age difference between him and Rabbi Chanina. Therefore, it is difficult to imagine that these four sages sat together, establishing halachot and explaining the agadot. So, Kol mi she'efshar lemachot la'anshe beto v'lo micha nitpas. In any event, they said anyone who has the capability to effectively protest the sinful conduct of the members of his household and does not protest, he himself is apprehended for the sins of the members of his household and punished. Al anshe beveto ba'anshe iro nitpas. Again, kol mi she'efshar limchot la'anshe beto v'lo micha nitpas al anshe beto. If you can protest the sinful actions of your household and you don't protest, then you are responsible for the actions of your household. If you can effectively protest the sinful actions of your town and you do not, the Talmud says that you are held responsible for the sinful actions of your town. And if you can successfully protest the evil action of the whole world and you do not, then all of the evil action of the world is resting on my shoulders. So Amar Rav Papa, Hane dve resh galuta nitpasu al kule alma. Rav Papa said, and the members of the household of the exile were apprehended and punished for the sins of the whole world, because their authority extends across the entire Jewish world. Because their authority is so wide, it is in their hands to ensure that nobody committed transgression. Ki hada amar Rav Chanina, my diktiv, Hashem b'mishpat yavo im zikne amo v'sarav. What does it mean in the book of Isaiah chapter 3, the Lord will enter into judgment with the elders of his people and its princes, saying, it is you who have eaten up the vineyard, the robbery of the poor is in your houses? So the question, what does that mean? Im sarim chatu, if the princes sinned by committing robbery, zekenim machatu, what did the elders, what did the sages of the generations do that is considered a sin? It's the princes who are sinning. Ela ema al zkenim shelo michu basarim. But say it's the elders who did not protest the actions of the princes. This is a good place to pause and have a pleasant tomorrow. Chaim u'levracha.